button or something?
We are recording.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. So I can just sort of take for the recording, right? The first about Vinay Gupta, right, in his papers on identity. There are kind of there's some subtle points in there, and I could just send you some of the to make this sort of a bit effective. Where I sort of think he's onto some good stuff, right, in those papers. So you don't have to sort of read through all of it, right? Not that you couldn't, but yeah, you kind of used to save time, right?
Pretty familiar with his work. I mean, I've been deeply embroiled in the identity space for, a decade.
Yeah. I mean, so this is where we do governance, and particularly digital governance, and particularly when we do cat herding, which is kind of what large part of this, right? Because everyone has an opinion, right? And everyone sort of worth its salt thinks that everyone else is obviously wrong, right? Because they are not exactly agreeing with me in each and every detail. So, and one of the reasons for that is actually something that Vinay outlines. Is kind of we spend quite a bit of time to sort of figure things out for ourselves, right? Because it's important, because it's us, right? So it's the moment we understand that. I mean, I had a couple of years figuring out some of those things because, I mean, as you know, I run the conversation community, 4,800 people, right? And 4,800 cats, cool cats, some of them, but still cats, right? Because I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. Right? So to actually succeed with any which kind of governance, I mean digital governance, because I mean in a small group and in a family, you can basically say, hey, you could use the dad voice, right? If everything else fails, and then, well, that sometimes fails too, but anyway. But in a digital space where people can just sort of go away if it's not sort of convenient, and you need to figure out things. So it could be seen as kind of a conceptual meaning-making space, kind of a conceptual triangle. So, I mean, it's identity, one corner, right? And the two others are principles and values, and we need both. So if they are at least somewhat related, all those three, then you can actually sort of start to sort of do collaborative meaning making, which means that you'll get loads of context that you can sort of build upon. So eventually people figure out that, hey, that community organizer or this governance guy, they're onto something. So it changes the whole sort of ambience, the whole place, right? But this is obviously just very crude, right? You just do those three. It's usually good to have those three turning into some kind of slightly more nuanced, shared and shareable understanding, and hence governance documents, right? It's just that governance documents sort of comes with a bit of a risk because no one these days has got any time whatsoever to do anything. It sounds really weird, but that's usually my experience when I talk to people. No one has got any time, which obviously is not objectively true, but that's sort of their experience, right? So if you want to sort of punish people, you can basically assign them tasks, right? That's kind of how it feels. But if we are to do sort of a working social code, we also need that sort of hashing through the boring stuff, right? And I mean, I can give you kind of a use case. In the conversation community, there's two groups of people, roughly speaking, right? One group that can code and a larger group that can't, right? So they're basically using, they're building their every comment and text and article and interest from two slightly different premises. So the whole health and vibrancy of that community hinges on me having identified a very small group out of those 4,800 who are sort of somewhat bilingual. And with that, I mean very simply, they can understand people, and they can also understand code people. So there's two things going on, right? The people have more or less of sort of a judgment that those code people are nerds, right? Or geeks or weird or something wrong with them or whatever it is, right? I mean, it varies kind of what they have sort of for superstition, right? And the code people were usually actually quite intelligent, and actually, lo and behold, they're actually sort of humans as well, although they are not seen as that always, right? They sometimes look down on the people because they can't code. That's kind of just how it is, right? It's kind of a battle of reactions in between these two groups, right? So, but it also helps to, there's a great German word for this, Fingerspitzgefühl. That saved me many times, when to just let be, right? Because if I, sort of the fearless founder and the sole organizer, would sort of be seen as taking sides, all hell would break loose, right? So this is just one of the many ways that you can sort of, what I just said, all of those kind of my seemingly meandering, rambling stuff is a possible meaning making in between identity, principles, and values, right? It's just an observation that those two triangles are slightly at oblique angles to each other, right?
Yeah.
So social code and code, maybe we will never get them sort of done, right? Because code has this wonderful quality that you can run it, right? It quash some bugs and refactor it, and then it actually runs. It actually produces, right? So social code is infinitely more commonly used. It's just that most social code is really crappy and really buggy, right? And has it got refactored for the last couple of 100 years? No. Do we still use English? Yes. Do we make ourselves understood perfectly? No. And I could go on and on, right? And the weird thing is that, objectively speaking, we should all do code, right? We should sort of do away with the weird ways we are using English, but we are not, right? Because it's social, right? It's just, and that goes all the way back to social identity.
Yeah.
So it's what I just said is kind of outlining a possible way to actually begin to understand that maybe we can't just pretend that it's just one level plane of meaning making, right? Because it's rather kind of a more of a wrinkly little map that sort of needs to sort of just kind of sort of work, right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to consider our change direction, which is Ian. I forget his name. He's from the Three Horizons Foundation.
Yeah.
You're familiar with them?
I saw it mentioned in one of the Discord threads.
Well, I just put in a link to a random article on the Three Horizons.
Okay.
Medium, which the Horizon One is sort of what is now. What the world as it has been, so to speak. Horizon 2 is where we are today with our conversations and with our tools and our dialogues, and in our journey to a decentralized world for most of us, But we're talking about turning over the software industry, Doug Rushkoff's program or be program, and trying to reduce the distance from the programmers and the others in a self-sovereign stack, which I can show you later. And Raoul left. I think he would have been good to have him on board. Serendipitous connections like that we try to encourage in sociocracy.
Yeah, I mean, culture change is.
Okay.
There's another angle I would like to throw in here before we continue. And that is, I just went further into Greg's document from that first principles and values document. And in there, there's a really, really great question. Can we have a better dialogue between the collective and the individual?
Between what?
Can we have a better dialogue between the collective and the individual? So that is a really, really great question. And it's kind of, we can sort of keep coming back from that, because that question looks a bit different, whether you look at it from an identity perspective or from a values and principles perspective. So from a principles perspective, it's much easier to sort of be actionable towards answering that. That's kind of what principles do, right? We have a question and you have sort of very principled effort, and you can sort of coordinate concerted efforts towards really great answering, right? And then the answering can sort of spawn projects and programs and tasks and whatnot, right? And you can just organize and systematize, and everything just works, right? On principle, right? I mean, then there's practice. We'll come to that. But if we just sort of just do a strictly principled approach, as many people have done, and if you don't get to the underlying values, you can get nasty things like fake compliance and wicked problems and whatnot, right? So you have to sort of build the principles on the values. It's just that if you look at that question, that particular question, can we have better dialogue between collective and the individual? And yet, then we can sort of go to Twitter. Ideally, in Twitter, we could just have a really great dialogue, right? Because there's millions of people there, individuals, and there's a collective discourse of sorts, right? And then you see Twitter, what's really happening is a clash of values, and it often deteriorates over time because everyone wants to have their set of values to sort of, can we have a better dialogue between the collective and individual? Yes, by God, if everyone just becomes a Mormon, and then it's all sorted, right? And then if you're a really true, fervent believer in Mormonism, you go on some Mormon crusade or whatever they do when they sort of try to convert infidels, right? This sounds ridiculous until you see what's going on in the world. That's kind of 50% of what we do, right? We sort of bash each other's head in because these other guys, misguided as they are, they have sort of the wrong values. So that same question can sort of be very inflammable material if you look at it from values. So suddenly you need to actually have principles to sort of stay and guide the values. So it's kind of both ways, right? And all of that obviously implies there's all kinds of different individuals. So the identity, I mean, if you need to defend your own identity, and violently so, aggressively so, then out of that comes slightly different values and principles than possibly the ones you and me have, right? And from an identity perspective, can we have a better dialogue between collective and individual? Yes, if everyone just follows my lead, then we sure can have that, right? So then you have sort of the quagmire of leadership, which is written thousands of books about leadership, and it didn't really help. So the cooperative is actually sort of an evolved game level, if I can call it that. But it requires everyone to actually agree on the cooperative, right? So because the cooperative becomes like a kind of a default conflict in between me and the we, and the we is kind of the cooperative that is meant to sort of be an operationalizing structure. So yeah. So I mean, why would we need identity? Why would we sort of want to confuse principles and values? Well, because we want people to contribute their unique value, right, into the mix, and preferably as much self and organized as possible. So people basically just chip in and contribute with whatever they are good at. Right?
So in the 5-level systems thinking that our chain is engaging with the Three Horizons group to implement, you have the system 5 is the highest level, and that's the identity of the collective, and that identity is its values and principles.
Yeah.
So it's very consistent with what you're saying there. It would be good if you got involved in the process of defining our values and principles and our first, second, and third horizon.
I mean, I would love to sort of be involved in any which way that the benefits our chain. Obviously, I think. Let's see where to sort of begin to. I mean, first, one of the immediate benefits of sort of being more or less clear about these things is that then the cooperatives can sort of be behind substantially, I mean, meaningfully, the story and the brand. Now, the brand can obviously be done in any which kind of way, right? You can just slap R-Chain on and do a nice logo and spend oodles of money on marketing, and you're good to go, right? And eventually they will form a brand in the public awareness, right? It's just that if we're then sort of messaged by someone who is not R-Chain, let's say a kind of a coder in Bulgaria or somewhere, right? And he's considering joining us, right? Then what he would like to do is to have an experience of that brand being peopled, populated. So we are kind of living the brand. Otherwise, it will be just kind of a facade, and then we're just us old stogies, and we are not nearly living our principles and values, and he will sense that somehow, if he's good, and then we will go seek elsewhere for greener pastures or something, right? So this can be really, really powerful because, I mean, I'm old, right? More or less 56 soon. So I've been in some of those companies where there was a huge glitch and disconnect in between brand, which was always really nice, surface level of things, and then what went on inside. So whether it's kind of death by corporatocracy or death by committee or death by bureaucracy or death by any other means, right? The terrible boss or something, right? All of that is basically just boils down to sort of it's not connected, right? We're not living the story. So with a systematic approach and building that, there's at least a better odds of a better alignment in between, right? And that is really, really good marketing also. It's kind of a very practical, it can be turned into very practical purpose, right? So if we are the good guys, we should be able to market ourselves as the good guys and attract more good guys and thus grow and succeed in whatever we define the charter to be, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
And our chain right now is where the money is. They have funding. They have the same aspirations that we have in Digital Life Collective and in HoloChain. Okay. So this is where we get credit for our efforts in the rock currency. And I'm looking to have a bring your own ID currency as well that capitalizes on the asset value of a strong pseudo-anonymous unique identity, because you need unique identity before you can have governance. How can you can't have a democracy unless you have unique people and not a million robots.
Yeah. I mean, it helps if we are human, right? It really helps.
Right. So, we get.
I mean, there's one thing more I would like to throw in, right? Because I wrote down just on a hunch, right? What could I possibly contribute? I mean, my unique thing I could chip in, right? And possibly, not sure yet, it could be conversations at scale. So conversation at scale is kind of a very intuitive value proposition until you actually look at it, because it's really difficult. So I managed to scale the community up to 4,800 people.
Yeah.
And I have kind of an approach to that. Now, the thing is, it needs, if we go much beyond, let's say we do, our chain grows to kind of 1 million people, right? By then, if we did that right, we will have succeeded, because we will be kind of a formidable force to be reckoned with. I mean, and the power alone in sort of that group of people, so many, it's nothing, almost nothing we can't solve. So, I mean, just to give you kind of a lofty visionary number, right? But to get to 1 million, I don't actually think there are any really, really great digital governance mechanisms that have scaled to that point, right? I mean, we do have Facebook. They scaled to 1.5 billion, but they're crooks. So it didn't scale all that well, right?
Yeah, and this is why my part, your part is doing the conversations at scale. My part really at this point is providing the self-sovereign stack.
Yeah.
What did I do? Okay, which turns over the software. And I don't know how much of this I showed you before. Turns over the whole software development, where we provide a simple interface using GraphQL or Graph Query language to access all of the data sources, all of the information sources, all of the APIs, all of the bots that we control or can control.
Yeah.
And we can pick and choose information from various sources and put those together into our graph, which defines our identity in terms of our connections to people and social objects and credentials and payment methods that we control. And it lets us stitch these together for ourselves and connect with other people and teams and organizations and collectively build these graphs of the, these graphs are, in essence, they're the short-term memory. I mean, it can be long-term, but it's the short-term memory. And Facebook developed GraphQL, and they did it to solve the problem they had in scaling.
Yeah.
And right now, it's the only game in town that can do the kind of scaling we're talking about here, but we can do it in a self-sovereign way, so that GraphQL can actually run in your iPhone or your Android and on your desktop. And you can have a user agent. You have a user agent which represents you when you're not online, which is a self-sovereign thing that you run in an environment you trust. And the whole idea of this self-sovereign stack is you don't have to trust anything or anybody. You have open source GraphQL that is vetted by thousands of programmers as being safe and secure. But of course, the security is based on what you do, and you have privacy by default. Anything that you expose explicitly, and you have user-managed authorizations and provider relationship management that you control in terms of what you expose of your stuff, and you become the hub of, or you become your own identity provider. You're not trusting another identity. Well, you may be. You can use any identity. You can even use Facebook as your identity provider if you want, but it has limited functionality. The bring your own ID or collaboration on identity is where we have where we attribute to each other's identity peer-to-peer, and then the teams attribute, and the organizations attribute, and the federations attribute, and then you have a self-sovereign identity that's trusted in national identity ecosystems, because trust is hard to build and easy to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it is also building on what I sort of started with, right? I mean, the coders and the non-coders, right? The coders and the ordinary people. I mean, you and me, we can understand the GraphQL concepts, right? The construct. Right? It's just that, let's say I would turn that into a conversation community post, and then
the main thing here is that building a graph is simply a matter of configuration. There's no programming involved.
Yeah, true. It's just that when it comes to the social code, just as a thought experiment, if I would take that GraphQL thing, you and I know that this is very powerful, and this is kind of what we could use as part of our sort of scaling things. If I would turn it into a post and share it, I can guarantee you that none of the non-coders would dare say anything to that post. Right? So all the coders would say, yeah, that's kind of obvious, that's good stuff. So they would probably not comment either, because they would just sort of, yeah, good stuff, okay, I don't need to add anything, good. And the non-coders would feel enormously intimidated. But if I share a picture of a cat or a dog, and then say, this is a nice little dog, I get loads of likes, and many people would, yeah, I have a dog as well. My dog is cute as well, or a cat, or badger, or elephant, or whatnot, right? So they can relate. So social code has this ability to meaningfully connect, aka language, and how we sort of use language to meaningfully connect. So this is probably not that Facebook did a really great job, but they managed to sort of inject themselves somehow into what would then be called colloquially as the social graph. So they basically kind of hijacked everyone's Dunbar circle, like 150 people. And suddenly everyone is on Facebook. Why? Well, because everyone is on Facebook. And well, why? Well, because everyone is on Facebook. So there's really kind of a big nothing in there, right? But you can't argue with the results because everyone is on Facebook. I mean, not everyone in strictly mathematically speaking, because 7 billion of us, but a truckload of people, right? So what did they do? They just slapped on posts, comments, chat stuff, right? So they built essentially a platform. So the platform is something I've been sort of field testing. What do we need as a user interface? So the GraphQL, Rolang, Archain can run underneath and just provide this sort of at Facebook scale, right? And also be interoperable, not only in between programming environments and codes and all that, but in between sort of code and social code, in between programmers and non-programmers. Because if you do that, we don't need to get it right, by the way, perfectly. It just needs to be slightly better than Facebook. But if we do, what's the gain? Why should we bother with sort of doing this, right? Because we get adoption. There's one really, really great simple example, what I'm talking about here. You know the project called CryptoKitties?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of silly thing, right? It's not kind of what you expect if we're going to save the world with blockchain. Yeah, CryptoKitties. That's a terrible idea. We're not going to save the world squat doing CryptoKitties, right? But it got adopted something fierce. Why? Because CryptoKitties, you silly. It's obvious. It's kind of kittens. Everyone wants one, right? So if we do, and then what happened is that it turned into sort of a relatable social object, right? And it turned into a collectible even, right? I mean, if you ask me objectively, I would probably say, well, people are stupid. I'm not sure why. What is wrong with people, right? But I can't really argue with the result, the outcome. So if Archain, I'm not saying Archain should do CryptoKitties, right? But if we learn a thing too from what got adopted, then we can sort of design our story accordingly, right? It's not saying kind of, yeah, let's do one of those, right? Just a throwaway thing, right? But I mean, if you go to the closer example, the whole resonating music thing, right? Then you kind of see that it makes a point, right? I mean, is music, can you sort of put a musical in the emotional experience strictly onto the blockchain? No, you really can't, right? Can you relate to music better if you sort of sign up for such a system? Yes, you can. So the musical experience fills in and basically plays the same role, similar role as the CryptoKitties thing, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Joachim is taking the sort of gamification approach with his card interface. Maybe we should make those kitten cards or something.
No, I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, there's probably tons of great ideas already in the cooperative, right?
Yeah. Well,
and what would because adoption usually comes as one of those sort of afterthoughts.
Yeah. So
which is understandable. I mean, every group is kind of, we have a great thing, and everyone is really good at what they're doing, the innovation part, right? And then kind of the calculus or the program or the GraphQL. I mean, all of that is great. And then, okay, so how are we going to adopt this? Right? And there's much fewer hands up, right? Kind of, oh, okay, yeah, we need to think about that, right? But I mean, it's really crucial that, not saying that we need that to win, but adoption makes for much better, richer feedback, right? And that feedback is what we can use to sort of scale sensibly, right? Because I'm not sure we are going to sort of end up being 5,000, sort of a boutique blockchain thing, right? I mean, not sure. Or we're going to be 5 million. I mean,
Right.
really,
Well,
really great. I mean, we don't know that yet, right? But with the adoption and
we're-
feedback, we will know, right?
Yeah, we're not only doing rock chain, big life, our chain. We're doing digital life. We're doing our chain, and we have a host of communities that we're connected to.
Yeah.
And this is just initial thing, and we have members that bridge the communities so that they can translate between the languages.
Yeah.
And the point about how programming and programmers and users interact changes quite a bit, and and the systems become more programmable. I mean, I developed a useful interface for Mattermost, okay, and then somebody can connect to that, or they might be able to connect to it, or they might be able to copy it, okay, and then they get presented with some kind of interface that lets them see what cards are available to them, and they create them in their graph, and they're basically giving them a name or a language in their context. They're playing the card in the context to creating a graph of everything they have and everything they access. And so the idea is that I might do a configuration and then I would share it. So we turned over software development and made it decentralized, and that we share tools with each other. And there's like 650 AI APIs that are available. The whole deck of cards of AI APIs that you can use, and you can select your data with the GraphQL query and feed it as a stream, as a channel into an AI API or AI bot that you or someone else runs.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously one of the big advantages with, one advantage is interoperability. The other is, and possibly even more powerful, is that if we would develop a shareable social ledger, suddenly it would be kind of slightly less lossy when we talk, cooperate, and collaborate among each other, right? Even across groups, right?
Right. And
so you know the whole story about sort of GitHub, right? Which it could have been a much better idea than Facebook, but it didn't scale fully, right? For lots of reasons, right? So, and I mean, we could basically just do that. So the social ledger will then become, or could become, the sort of social glue. So everyone understands that, hey, yeah, I could chip in here, and it builds, right? I mean, this brings me to another point, right? The social ledger is something I would love to sort of get my hands on and actually sort of align with the pattern language, because then I can basically just guarantee you that it will build, right? That's kind of the whole idea with the pattern language, that you kind of, if you have a pattern language for a building, if you combine all those patterns and you just follow what says on the patterns and the cards where you access the patterns, you get your house built. You just follow the instructions, right? It's kind of like those. Have you seen those images in IKEA do-it-yourself kind of putting your shelf together, right? That's basically just a set of patterns. Follow them, and yeah, with a little bit of luck, but essentially most people would sort of get that shelf. But it works, right? So, and I mean, this is eminently so in code. Most coders wouldn't think twice of the miracle that actually you can code things and it actually works. But that's kind of an all non-coders, that's a miracle. Coders doesn't really think about that because they just do stuff, right? And you just they sort of got used to that stuff. Sometimes really worked. If you coded it well enough, then the JavaScript just does what the JavaScript does, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, even more strictly, I mean, the Roland calculus or any other calculus that has a really nice math quality to it. It always performs perfectly because that's what math does, right? 2 plus 2 actually is always exactly 4, and that's never going to change. But if we then move into cards and ledgers and adoption, then we have humans, right? Non-coding humans, and they are kind of strange critters, and they have their own heuristics. And I mean, if I would say, hey, here's a bunch of pattern languages, use them, and you'll be happy, right? I mean, I can give you one clear example. It took me 6 months to design a rule for the conversation community. And it is as follows. Add considered comments on other people's posts. So that's kind of the core card, the core pattern, if you will. Follow that and all will be well, right? And it scales perfectly because everyone can understand it. A couple of years later, there's around 10% of all the members who actually follows it. It's just one rule, right? It's not rocket surgery. It doesn't require you to have PhD in physics to understand it. It's just one small sentence, right? So adoption and identity really is a thing. So this is kind of where, if we would use GraphQL, social ledgers, possibly knowledge ledgers. I talked with Joachim, by the way, about sort of adding knowledge ledgers. Because with knowledge ledger as kind of a graph on top of social ledgers, you will start to begin to leverage via principles, values, governance, and organizing. You will begin to leverage intangibles. You sort of get a better grasp on, okay, all of the people who are working here in our chain and elsewhere, can we become even better at pooling our knowledge, our resources, into sort of building things? And a knowledge ledger would do that, right? So this is just kind of a further abstraction. Now the data ledger is obviously the R chain, blockchain, right? So that's just, it's there. We need that, right? And then with the GraphQL, yeah, sorry, go on.
We are back-end agnostic. We can run, it runs across Holochain, R chain, Ethereum, and key value data stores, SQL databases, all of the services and APIs that are out there are linked to the ledger. And the ledger initially is going to be off-chain because the chains we want to put it on aren't ready yet. But because of the architecture we're using with the GraphQL, to move it onto our chain is just a change in configuration. It's not a change in any of our applications.
Okay. So you could just say then which kind of application you want, right?
Correct. And the main thing we're doing is user-managed authorization. It's like how your activity, how your interactions in an activity within a team, within a group, within an organization, and among organizations is exposed. And your relationship with the providers that you use, how you define In other words, you define the terms and conditions using the provider rather than the provider defining the terms and conditions. Of course, there has to be the VRM standard that we'll be working on at the IIW in a couple of weeks. Hasn't been defined yet, but this turning over of the pyramid so that we control our relationships with Facebook is becoming mandated by governments with the GDPR and the HIPAA regulations, and there's the right to be forgotten. There's great incentives for providers to put us in control of the use of their information, of our information. And because most everybody doesn't give a fuck and will make everything public anyway, it doesn't hurt them to give the control to the people that ultimately will take it. And the idea of BYOID means you can come into the conversation with any identifier, any identity. You can come in with a Facebook ID or a GitHub ID, or Twitter ID, or whatever, and aggregate those identities so that when you make a change in one, it will change all of them. For example, address. Okay. It provides the interface for you to revoke access and all that, which now the vendor doesn't have to be responsible for because the user himself carries out the action, revokes permissions for certain uses of his information or whatever. In essence, the user is creating their own graph, which has their personas in it, which has an identity somewhere. In essence, they have a different persona in every context that they work in that the permissions may be different. Obviously I can be Daffy Duck here and then Zorro over there. And still me, but I have different rules of exposure of my information.
Yeah, this is really good because this is also what I see as probably one of the deep reasons for why, objectively, people should have left Facebook ages ago, right? Because it's a terrible thing.
Right.
And why aren't they, right? It's a good question. Why aren't they leaving? Well, because they invested quite a lot of attention, and then that grew into some kind of habits, grooves in the mind to, their identity got somehow connected with whatever digital avatar they have sort of configured and confabulated in Facebook, right? So it's kind of them, right? You can't sort of just jank them out because part of them is kind of lodged inside a machine somehow, right? So whether we like that or not doesn't really enter the equation because it's there. People still tell me, and they really mean it, and they have invested lots of time and effort and emotion into it, that they are on Facebook, and sometimes say also in Facebook. And when I try to tell them that there's no such thing, it's just a browser tab or just a smartphone app, right? You're not really there, right? But for them, it feels like as if they are, right? So this identity thing, if we could explain that so people can really grok on the deep visceral level that, hey, this is actually a much better way to do digital identity. It will be much less of a pain for them to switch back and forth, including, whenever that happens, move away from Facebook, because objectively they already know that, okay, Facebook is bad because they're stealing all my data and I get nothing in return. So that they got that part, right? So on an objective level, everything is everyone is on board with that. Right? And then on an emotional level, no, I'm on Facebook, so I'm not leaving, right? That's still where it's at, right? So this can't really be solved in a simple way. That's actually my we don't really know. This is a good one. Sorry to just I can return to that later if we need to. The offboarding and intangible assets. I've been talking with Joachim on and off for sort of. So I just came up with that word, right? Offboarding, and he liked it really much, right? Yeah. Because everyone knows about onboarding, right? How we bring on people on board to, let's say, your R-chain or holochain or something, right? But we really need to do the offboarding properly, right?
Yeah, and here's what happens with the self-sovereign stack. Okay, now, okay, so I give you access to a conversation card in Twitter. Okay, and you can use your Twitter account to log into that conversation card.
Yeah.
Now you have a BYOID, you become part of it. So if I give my brother access to my bank account using the UMA standard, in essence, I'm giving him a bank account card, okay, which uses the UMA standard to give him access through next Tuesday to my bank account. Okay. And my brother then has a bring BYOID. They have a decentralized identifier in the context that the card was created, exposed according to the rules in that context.
Yeah. I mean, this is great because you get to essentially a contextually intelligent system. So ideally, everyone can basically chime in where they want, right?
Yeah, you can make it public, obviously.
Yeah, or parts of it public, and still have. I mean, if this it's just one. This is kind of my domain, right? Where if you have a really big pattern language that encompasses all of this, you can actually have the best of both worlds. You can have sort of a public stream, if you call it that, a road path, but it's kind of really large and it's many participants, and then you can sort of just do a permission per identity, contextually intelligent. So you have kind of a small project space going on here, because a small specialized working group, for instance, it's just 5 people, and because it needs to be very focused, and we are sort of focusing on one particular thing with real depth, and there's no one else in the world that cares even about that than us, right? Or a small project or a small idea, or we're building the next collectible on-chain little crypto badger thing, or that's, well, whatever it is, right? Small groups, right? But then with a large, not sure if it's a chain. Is it possibly a shard or it's a lattice? I'm not sure. My math, this is kind of beyond my math skills, but I can sort of sense that it's kind of beyond just a linear thing, right? Some kind of graph, right? But
it turns out to be a hologram.
Yeah, that's a good image. But I mean, and then we can actually build, so everything then builds. And I mean, let's say we add a couple of bots, right? And we equip these bots so they learn from us. I mean, they have some initial programming, obviously, right? They can say hi or whatnot, right? But let's say we make these bots so they can sort of learn via the social ledgers, via the knowledge ledgers, right? So they can sort of begin to suggest and start to act as helping us, right? And with the contextually intelligent layer already built in, over time they will start to be really, really helpful because they're learning, right? I mean, I still remember to this day when I first went into, I think it was Amazon, this was years ago, and I bought a couple of books, and I scrolled down because I'm curious, and I saw people who bought those books also bought these books. And I was just blown away, right? And I bought a couple of those as well. And guess what? Few of them were good. Because I realized that, hey, I've just had an intelligent conversation with a machine. I knew that much already then, right? But the social ramifications of that is still something we're grappling with, right? I mean, most people would just sort of, no, John, that's la la land, right? Please don't even continue. But we can, right? We are already doing it, right? So, but with the next generation of, and it requires us to be more familiar with, is probably the right word, with ourselves, I mean our embodied selves, warts and all, and our digital self. So that dialogue needs to happen, right? I mean, the whole sort of digital identity. And if we have that, then these bots, whatever we end up calling them, I really don't like the word bot, but anyway, they can start to interact with our digital selves, digital avatars, digital identities. And then we don't actually need to go to Amazon, right? Because our digital selves will have a chat ongoingly with these bots. Whoever we can assign permission or not on a sort of a ongoing basis, right, with these bots. And they will just bring things to our doorstep, right? I mean, this is obviously what they're already doing with Siri and Alexa and all that, right? It's just that it's still very kind of early days. And for this to not be clunky, this is actually what drew me in the first place with our changing. When I saw that, hey, this little machine head, it can scale really, really quickly. So that means that these things are not just all science fiction anymore, because it's just going to work. So I mean, for me, the big selling point with all this applied is contextual intelligence. That's kind of, if I just shorten it down extremely much, right? Yeah, I think you're muted still.
Once again, I return to the diagram here, and we use an AI bot here.
Yeah.
And then we stitch it with other people and organizations. Okay, so that it becomes what I call a mob bot. And I registered mobbot.org.
Mobbot.org.
Yeah. And they're created grassroots. One guy in the closet says, I want to try one of these 460 Mobbot APIs, which I run myself or run as a service, whatever. And I want to share that with my friends, my community. And then it becomes adopted by families or churches or communities or organizations or municipalities. And it scales.
Yeah, it just simply scales.
It turns over. It puts the AI under our control rather than control.
That's a brilliant conclusion. I mean, because this is kind of one of the ideas I have, and one of the reasons why I'm doing large finite sets of pattern languages, is that if we don't have really large all-encompassing systems, we will still end up fragmenting and balkanizing and lacking shared understanding, whatever it is, right? And with these large inclusive systems, you get a qualitative difference. I mean, if only one thing possible application is that you can actually get resources, money, currency, attention, whatnot, further out edge in a graph, in a network. So not only does it scale, it scales better, it scales differently. So if you look at, you can actually see this in Facebook with precision, because you have very few sort of supernodes, sort of the popular digital avatars, right? The brand names, the brand people, right? And they have, and the same in Twitter, they have millions of followers. So they are kind of struggling. Many of them have caved in and just turned broadcast, and also have hired someone who can sort of ghost tweet, right? There's kind of an interesting kind of a human that sort of almost becomes a bot, right, for another human. So, but with a different system, you suddenly have the ability to actually build better graphs. Because the reason for these supernodes and popularity contests and ghost bots and humans and whatnot is because the human you can basically just possibly crunch the numbers. Can I be close friends with more than 150 people? Well, possibly not, right?
Right.
So I mean, but my digital avatar can find affinity with possibly a million other digital avatars, right? In some particular interest of mine, pattern languages, right? Or generative sequences, or anything else that my digital avatar can dream up into existence, right? And again, we sort of already did that, sort of, with GitHub, right? Where it just kind of gelled and lots of code was produced, right? But the transaction level wasn't really there, transaction layer, right?
Okay, let's pause. I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm taking the dogs out.
10 minutes or so we could just figure out. I mean, next time I will try to make the governance meeting, and there's a couple of things here, possibly more pieces of the puzzle I need to understand a bit more, but and I need to explain better to you the whole knowledge ledger idea. I mean, the long and short of that is that if you would build knowledge ledger, which is essentially just an abstract layer on top of the social ledger, you get basically intangibles leverage. You start to build a distributable system. So it's not kind of top down. It's not some boss that says that you, Mr. Human Capital, in expert systems, you're going to do this, and slotting you into kind of a cubicle, and you're doing only that. But a system that evolves similarly to the social ledger, and everyone can sort of eventually figure out that, yeah, I'm happy. My happiest best when I do this, 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 and this. My shorthand for this, and there's lots of more theory behind it than just what I should try to cram in these couple of minutes, is basically intangibles. So with social ledger, you get sort of the we, kind of, and with the knowledge ledger, built on the we, you get kind of an increasing understanding of everyone's sort of optimal niche in that we. So everyone eventually gravitates towards doing something. that they're happy with, and it's kind of an ongoing negotiation in between the layers. So it kind of works out really well for everyone else as well. I mean, there have been holacracy, sociocracy, and self-organizing, and there's been attempts at doing kind of sort of knowledge ledger, but they have sort of been, in my view, a bit hobbled by someone tries to figure out everything. So a modular system is, in my view, to be preferred, because then it's much easier to reconfigure. So let's say Archain is doing their kind of knowledge ledger, and Holochain is doing a different, right? But if you try to sort of force feed both those two communities into just one particular, this is sociocracy 2.0, and now you are ordained to do exactly this. So there's going to be resistance because it's kind of possibly not a really great fit. But with the modular system, cards, patterns, graphs, and nodes, it's actually a better chance. And also, some people actually like to sort of figure these things together differently. And that's my experience. That kind of, it's half of the fun sometimes to sort of figure things out, right? But if you get kind of a strict, kind of well-defined, already existing model, then kind of, okay, so I'm just going to sort of have to adapt to that, right? Yeah. Okay, that means you're the boss, right? So
you know, the graph you're creating is your knowledge base, you know, and the Archain knowledge base and the digital life knowledge base are created independently, but can be stitched together. And you have people in activities, connecting these and cooperations, connecting them. The final thought that I'm trying to wrap my head around is sort of a correspondence between the notion of a pattern language and the three horizons.
But if you can send me just those, whatever documents you have on three horizons, I can have a beginning go at that, right? Because that's an important query. One that we need to sort of figure out, are there synergies, are there intersects, and can, exactly as you said, what do we need to stitch together, right? Yeah.
Okay, I will copy them from the chat. I'll copy the links from the chat and send them to you on Facebook. Do I have Facebook open? No, I don't.
Or you could just send it via email or Facebook chat, whichever. So are we on for when's the next good time? Is that next Sunday?
Well, I mean, I can be available most days, sometime. We can go to Sunday or.
But here's a suggestion. As soon as I've gotten some kind of figuring out the three horizons thing and how it could possibly relate to pattern languages, and in the context of stitching together, interoperability, GraphQL, and whatever else comes into my mind I can weave together, right? I can just ping you, and we'll take it from there, right? If that might be sooner than next Sunday, right?
Yeah. So
I would probably talk with Joachim. I think Tuesday, and I would just bandy back and forth a couple of things with him, and then I can just have a go at the Three Horizons document, and I just ping you, right?
Yeah. I don't know why I can't get rid of this.
And by the way, thanks much for this. I mean, you're sharing screens and telling outlining some of these things really help clarify some of these concepts, because it's quite a bit to grasp, right? Yeah, and I can also give you kind of some context on that Greg's question in the document, right? And I can point you to where it is in the document as well. The can we have a better dialogue between the collective and the individual? Because in my mind, it helps to have sort of, not sure if possible to just have one anchor point, but if someone will ask me, okay, John, can you give me the 30-second elevator pitch here, right? And then I would probably say, yeah, this is kind of a more of a distributed governance blockchain thing. And part of the magic here is that it might have a go at answering, can we have a better dialogue between the collective and the individual? So if I sort of clock that now and I get it, sort of crammed it into less than 30 seconds, I would be able to actually sell this to others, right, who has never heard about our chain. So sometimes it helps to have this one thing to fire off to people, right, if they ask you. So, but you and me know that it's a bit more than just that one question, right? So, if I would start with GraphQL, I would immediately put half of my friends to sleep. So that's kind of, even though you and I know that that's actually a really important thing, it's kind of not possible the one
Well,
to
that's
start with,
right. You know, that's why we don't have to all be working on the same side of the elephant.
No, exactly. I mean, that's a good image, right? I've used that a lot of time. Yeah, our chain as an elephant stitching device, right? That's kind of a bit of a wonderful image there, right? So yeah, and the elephant needs to go places possibly, and not trample too many innocent whilst doing it. So yeah, but this has been good. I will go through that. I mean, remind me. This is the Three Horizons thing is one of those things you're using to sort of just have a go at the governance in our chain.
Yeah, right? I should give you a better link, because the Three Horizon group, which is specifically is helping us with the systems approach to organizing the activities of the cooperative. Agility innovation. It looks like they're on the second page of Google. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I can't find them right now, but I should get you that link to more specifically. But I'm not sure how much you need to know about this sort of the organizational framework that's implied by the 5 systems and 3 horizons approach.
Yeah, I mean, what would be helpful is if
you help facilitate the conversations. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because the conversations then, I mean, what I guess I'm asking also, I'm curious about, is that that Three Horizons thing and the 5 systems levels they need to be adopted, right? Turned into sort of living practice in the cooperative.
Well, yeah, they're going to be guiding us into implementing those.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And now, in the meantime, we need to have conversations about values and principles, and you know that apply to decentralized governance where there is no hierarchy.
Yeah.
And this is like virgin ground, and it's we need discursive discussion about uh, our values and principles.
Yeah. But this is correct, right? If decentralized governance can be seen as kind of a desired quality for our chain.
Yeah, it's it's all about how we can get a collective intelligence
Ah,
of the
yeah.
organization.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to the question again, right? Can we have a better dialogue between the collective and the individual? Right? So
Yeah,
then that decentralized governance is kind of a support structure for that to actually take place on an ongoing basis.
this is the use case.
Yeah, you could call it that.
And
Yeah.
it has very high ideals. They want to change the world.
No, I mean, that's fine because tell you what, in the conversation community, people sometimes ask me, okay, John, how many people did you kick out? Well, actually 50, so 1%, right? 35 of them spammers, 15 due to our irreconcilable differences. Namely, I told them the rule because they violated the rule, and then they just said, John, go to where the sun doesn't shine, right? Okay. So the interesting thing is that that's just 1% of the members. 99% of the members are mostly okay human beings.
Well,
Most people just want to do, well, not saving the world, but kind of not actually wrecking it, right, if they can help it. So, and this for me was just such a big epiphany because I just picked up people. Well, I tried to choose, but sometimes people just joined and other people had other people join and it just grew, right? So I can't possibly say that I'm in charge and control of 4,800 people. That would just be ridiculous. So it just runs itself mostly. And I'm cat herding. Now, but with 99% of people basically okay, we should scale the whole thing. We
yeah.
really should, right? If 99% of people had been bastards, we should probably just kill them, right? And just do some small groups and trying to sort of do the Margaret Mead thing, right? Small elite things and trim tabbing the whole thing, right? But it's not, right?
Yeah.
So
we have to understand that people are going to gather behind the organizations and structures that they speak the same language in, and we're not going to get to this common language. What we can do is we can use a common language to translate between them, and this is that artificial intelligence can enable. But we do have to close up here.
No, I mean, this was good. I love how you sort of just put that as a use case because it's one big use case, right?
Yeah.
Can we save the world?
Oh, yes. I should give you. If you are going to have a role there, okay, you can do that through the work group funding, or you could, which is currently through the GitHub issues. You could whatever issues you can contribute to, you'll get paid for. And
yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, we should probably just return to that bit and outline that a bit more, right? So I can sort of just learn the ropes more or less, right?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
Okay. The you remember the co-op?
Yeah.
And you have a. I'll just put the GitHub issue boundaries. Oh well, actually, you should look at the issues. Didn't I put the issue? Didn't I do the issues? Yeah, that's. Oh no. Okay, well, it's just one click away. Um, you can read the contributing .md file to see how to contribute, which, like I said, you know, I think the working group is going to have its own budget, but right now, funding is through the GitHub issues, and you know, simply reporting on a GitHub issue makes you eligible for a bounty.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, and you know, it's the three pirate law. You know, three of us set a budget for an issue, and then at least three of us distribute that bounty among the participants at the end of the month.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so it's decentralized.
Yeah.
Self-funding, which we have, you know, requires some participation in order to get rewarded in the process.
Yeah.
In setting budgets and rewards. So so I guess what, you know, what I was suggesting is that, you know, you treat this as a real job and help our chain have its conversations. We need you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I truly appreciate that. And this is also a good way for me to sort of onboard myself hands-on with all the stuff, right? So I think I have kind of a couple of pennies worth to contribute. Right?
Okay.
So,
yeah, and in the principles and values document, you know, if you're too timid to hack up this document, you can set the suggesting mode to participate and collaborate in the working group. Okay, where
sort of just suggested edits and things, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can edit it. You can edit here. You know, everybody is king. You know, it's self-management philosophy. You can. We trust each other to make changes in the document.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, the big life principle of equivalence, in that everybody gets editing permission.
No, but that's good. That's good.
And you know, this gives a clue to possible values and principles. You know, in that, you know, just rather than so much defining something new, it's just figuring out what it is we already have.
Yeah, I mean that's usually a really, really good approach because it's kind of just building on what already exists, right?
And the big thing becomes, that we all speak our own independent language, and we have to get past that, as a collective, as a cooperative.
Yeah.
Where we have consensus, we can cooperate, we can collaborate, and
Yeah.
so a lot of that is defining that. Have you ever used Lumio?
I did more than a year ago. I haven't really visited recently.
Yeah, well, I want to try a group rank ordering there, where we take all the candidates for values and we rank order them individually and come out with a group rank ordering. This was very effective in our experiments at NJIT in helping to build consensus and collective intelligence of the group, where the group actually had a better solution to a problem than the best individual solution before the conversations.
Yeah. Did Joachim mention that he and I did the Senius company some time ago? And Senius is kind of what we borrowed that from Ryan Eno. So Senius is kind of a collective intelligence that turns into performance, essentially. I mean, that's simplified. So there's quite some thoughts that me and Joachim did about how to sort of get to those parts of the collective intelligence that can actually manifest into tasks, flow, performance, whatnot, right?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get Joachim involved in the governance group, but you can represent him.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably better doing other things, right?
Yeah. All right. Wonderful.
So, I mean, this was good, and I will ping you when I had to go at the documents, and then we can basically just say for now preliminary Sunday, right? Or else we just get in touch.
So, do you want to publish the video listed or unlisted?
Doesn't matter, really.
Yeah, but any preference?
No, I mean, it can be listed. It doesn't. That's okay, right? Yeah. Yep. If that's simpler.
Well, it's just as easy either way. But I post these things in the DiviDAO YouTube channel, and somebody says, "Wow!" out of the blue, they just found this video and got really inspired.
Yeah.
But I don't get many views anyway.
No. I mean, we could have shorter, more focus when we just have a go at, let's say, interoperability, right? And we do just for 10 minutes, and we really sort of get down to brass tacks about just that, right? So we could obviously use that for. But I kind of like to begin with to have these sort of free rambling conversations, because you never know, right, what sort of comes up, right?
I think that
no, good. So that was I got the links. I'll ping you about the Three Horizons thing, and if nothing else, we'll talk again in a week or so, right?
Right. And I guess we'll keep this open. I think I set it up as a recurring meeting, didn't I?
Possibly you did. Yeah. So great so far. And
hold on for a second, Rich. Can you hold on? He's been trying to reach me.
Okay, but have you get to him then? So I mean, thanks for now, and one step at a time.
Yep, it's been good.
Towards Decentralized governance, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cheers for now. Cheers.
Right.